Good afternoon everybody. Welcome to my 2003 Jaguar S-Type R. For those of you who are regular subscribers to the channel, you'll be aware of the current 7-part series where I've actually been through various improvements, enhancements, repairs that I've made to this 2003 Jaguar. I suppose I'll just start with how it looks. So clearly this original design, it's the pre-facelift. This original design came about in 1999 and ran through to 2002 and includes this one, which is a 2002.5 manufacture year car. So here with this car, we've probably got arguably the best of both worlds, in my humble opinion, in that we have the original shape as the exterior, and then inside we've got the updated dashboard layout, which makes it look a little bit more contemporary compared to the original dashboard design with the launch cars. So the S-Type R, what makes it different? So I guess if I start off with the external appearance, I actually think it's quite subtle. So what are the differences externally from, say, maybe a 3-litre Jaguar S-Type Sport, for example, which also has the colour coordinated grille? Well, I suppose the first giveaway is the big chunky Brembo caliper brakes. These obviously are on all 4 wheels and very visible with the Jaguar R logo, the racing logo. Moving along to the sides of the car, then each side, the lower front wings, they sport an R motif badge as well. So that's your initial clues as to the fact that this is actually an R model rather than maybe a 3-litre Sport or even a 2.5 exec. There are a few other subtle changes as well. If you look really closely, you'll notice that she's actually running on 18-inch Zeus style alloys, but they're staggered. So the front tyres are 245 40s running on our R18s, an 18-inch rim, and at the rear they are 275 35 R18s. So we do have a staggered effect. So essentially the rear tyres that provide all the grip, because obviously it's a rear wheel drive car, they are around 3 centimetres or just over an inch, 1.2 inches wider than the front. The final telltale sign perhaps is the spoiler. So this does have a rear spoiler fitted from standard as factory, it's not an aftermarket one. If I turn to the interior, well, what are the differences with the interior? As I say, it does have the restyled dashboard and it's the bird's eye maple grey veneer finish. But I guess the main difference is the sporty seats with the R motif embossed into the upper section. These are 16-way adjustable seats in the front for both the passenger and the driver, with memory recall, so 2-position memory recall. This car being an S-Type R and also Japanese, it also has a pretty substantial spec. It's pretty fully loaded as far as I'm aware. It boasts the Alpine premium sound system, so that's the 2 bass speakers coupled up onto the parcel shelf, acting as a subwoofer, as well as all the other standard speakers, Alpine speakers that come with a premium sound system. This also came with an analog TV option, but in today's digital terrestrial TV, that's a bit of a bygone technology. But it is fully loaded. There's climate control, there's heated seats, winter pack, it's all there, and it makes for a very comfortable ride indeed with these supportive seats. I was surprised. I honestly thought that the seats would be hard and a little bit uncomfortable, but nothing could be further from the truth. I'd say these seats equal the comfort level of the seats found on my 2006 XJ Sovereign diesel for sure. So that's mostly the interior. There's one other extra on here which you don't tend to find on many of the UK cars. There's a sunblind option. It's an electric sunblind which operates via a timer switch. So 5 seconds up and down. Sadly, my one's not working quite right. Well, this does feel firmer than a standard S-Type. I've driven a few S-Types now, and it's definitely firmer than a standard S-Type for sure. The suspension, he says as he goes through a bumpy stretch of an old lane, the suspension comprises of unequal length wishbone setup at the rear and also wishbones at the front. The shocks are two-stage in that they are the computer assisted technology, or the computer aided technology suspension, or CATS as they call them, which basically has two settings controlled by a solenoid. Essentially what happens is there's a sensor near the bulkhead and a sensor towards the boot, and it senses the G-forces interplaying on the car, and it can then fire solenoids individually at each of the four corners to control the level of damping. So two settings, and essentially we have a firm setting and a soft setting, and what that enables the car to do is to really load up nicely in the corners. It means that we're able to have really benefit from really flat cornering, aided by those slightly larger tyres as mentioned earlier, and the 18-inch sporty wheels. Interestingly, should the CAT system fail, it defaults to the firm position, so I guess that's kind of an indicator to the driver that perhaps not all is well if it's running in firm mode all of the time. Let's just try some of the performance out of this section here. First gear. Yep, there we go. I've just lit up the traction control. Doesn't take much to provoke those big chunky tyres at the back. There's so much torque, there really is. We've talked about the suspension, but I guess the real interest point and the real attraction with this car is indeed the engine. So this is the AJ33S engine, so a 4.2 supercharged. With the AJ33S engine there is no VANOS, there's no VVT, variable valve timing. That was really just available with the naturally aspirated engine, the AJ33. The AJ33S produces 390 brake horsepower, and that's available at 6,100 RPM. Torque is a respectable 541 Newton meters, and the beauty of that torque is it's available quite low down in the rev range, so 3,500 is maximum torque, but amazingly even as little as 1,500 RPM we are pushing around 400 Newton meters. So this really does have scope to be quite the lazy V8, and a relaxed one as well at that. The AJ33S lasted until around 2006, where it was replaced subtly with the AJ34S. So the AJ34S introduced, should I say, the variable valve timing that was available on the naturally aspirated AJ33 and AJ34. And in supercharged form, the AJ34S, that produced around 414 brake horsepower and around 561 Newton meters of force. The AJ34S on the later cars, well, that's interesting because I think it's more exploitable than this model. And the reason I say that is because of one of the constraints with this model, being an early one with the AJ33S, is that it's got the ZF 6 HP 26 transmission, but because it's such an early car, remember this S-Type is the first car to have the 6 HP 26 transmission, and also the first Jaguar to have the AJ33S, and consequently for a brief time it was the most powerful production Jaguar car ever made. That meant that programmatically they dialed down the performance, I think, in terms of the transmission. I don't have any official documentation, but all I'll say is that the gearbox does tend to upshift perhaps a little earlier than you might expect. And so from my anecdotal observations and testing of my car, I think we're able to get first gear up to around 5,250 RPM. Bearing in mind the red line is 6,500 and peak power is meant to be 6,100. And also second gear is around 5,500. The only exception to that is if you use the Randall handle, the J-gate transmission controller here, the shifter, and you can see here we've got positions 2, 3 and 4 and so on and so forth, and that enables you to hold it until the engine rev limiter kicks in, which I believe is around 6,200, 6,250 RPM. Does that really detract from the drivability of the car? Arguably no, just because you are adequately compensated, in my humble opinion, with that gorgeous wave of torque that is instantly available thanks to the Eaton M112 supercharger. Compared to the engine's predecessor, the AJ27S, which was the 4-litre incarnation, that had 370 brake horsepower, slightly less torque. Although there is a slight delay in the gearbox downshifting on kickdown, you are rewarded with instant performance once that engine is delivering all of its horses and all of that torque.
So what of the competition for the Jaguar S-Type R? Well, I think there are 3 potential rivals for the car. The first being the Mercedes W211 E55 AMG Saloon. This high-performance saloon featured a 5.4-litre V8 supercharged M113K engine capable of delivering 469 brake horsepower and 699 Newton meters via a 5-speed automatic transmission. A more obvious rival could be considered the BMW E39 M5. This 6-speed manual car featuring the S62 engine featured 395 brake horsepower and 500 Newton meters of torque. Very impressive, bearing in mind this is a naturally aspirated engine rather than a forced induction engine. The final potential rival could be the Audi RS6. During 2002 and 2004, the RS6 Z5 variant offered a 4.2 V8 twin-turbo model with the BCY coded engine. This provided 444 brake horsepower and 562 Newton meters of torque, driven through a 5-speed automatic transmission, uniquely with the Audi Quattro 4-wheel drive system.
One other thing I should mention, which a number of people have commented on, is the fact that at the rear, although the suspension setup is quite advanced, there is a bit of a challenge in that there isn't a clever limited slip differential. I think this may have been done for cost reasons, if I'm honest. But what seems to happen is the traction control seems to use the powerful brakes just to keep the rear in line when things get a little bit out of hand. And I have noticed that occasionally, just when driving in quite a spirited fashion. So summing up then, I think I'm very, very fortunate to own this Japanese S-Type R. Well, thank you very much for watching. I hope that's given you a good insight into the Jaguar S-Type R. If you like the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and do comment down below and ask any questions.